Um, I was just thinking of something that um, because when you run, I've used the English language in a lot of different metaphors. I think I mentioned one time if I was in a different galaxy, a long, long time ago, speaking a different language, then we would be using different languages in which to describe what it is we're experiencing that we share with other antennas, right? In a language that can be translated in such a way that they can understand the language that they speak. And of course, putting telepathy aside, as I've covered that, right? But when I communicate here using sound that comes out of my voice box, which is a voice print, right? It goes into the system. See, it's scanning all the time anyway, biometrically through a binary quantum parallel system, parallelograms, quantum parallel computers, if you will, supercomputers, binary system, binary codes, mathematical codes, running all of its modeling, graphs modeling, using tables, distribution tables, water column distribution tables, all that stuff, which is all basic math. Right, acid and alkaline, how all that works, the importance of pH. But in this particular case, it really has to do with when I mentioned when I was a child, right? Checking boxes, which means you're in pure observation mode because you're experiencing pure light through yourself. So anything that isn't what that is what was what's being exposed, which is no different than when you used to take a negative and go into a dark room. Now you see the colors on a photograph, right? I love photography because you're a holographic projection system, right? Play two, record one, rewind, fast forward. So that's your RAM, right? So now you realize you got a simple arithmetic calculator between minus slash plus, what you choose to hold in memory, what you don't want to hold in memory, but things are moving so fast between the speed at which those circuits are opening and closing and recording, which is the experience of the event in a fallen system. So you already know you're in a fallen system because you already have a measurement built into yourself because you're running on pure light, which is a pure heart, because that's your soul consciousness is experiencing what you are in energy. So you're measuring the field, the consciousness field that you're operating in. So you already know you're in a fallen system. Otherwise, you would be experiencing what you are everywhere you go, but you're not, which means you're not experiencing the law of one, because I'm one. Okay? That's the truth of it. So you know the difference between darkness and light, okay, because you're measuring the torque speed difference between the two. It's really what it is, okay, between an inverter and a converter. The tension span, remember the tension span, how much information can you hold at once in your energy field, your consciousness? Man, that's just way too much energy. But you already realize you have access to all that information that is out there because of what it is that you represent in energy, which is infinite light, which is infinite love, because that's what you are in energy. You're the one. Okay, so everything else sort of becomes easy after that, but not really because now you're measuring the difference in the scales between what you are and what they are experiencing. Okay, what they're experiencing. So now you're experiencing what they're experiencing. So that's what you're doing. You're mapping. I've mentioned that on another video I did on Rose Sweet. Mapping parasitic consciousness. So what happens is you're observing. You're in a pure observer state because you're in pure light consciousness, observing state. As above, so below, right? And so you're observing what others are actually doing to themselves. That's in your mirror. And so that's why, as I mentioned before, when I was a child, I was experiencing the loss in voltage in others by virtue of the accident that that person was in. And what happened to them? I was experiencing the shock, the electrical shock in my own system, believe it or not. And I was probably 20 feet away, sitting in an automobile, moving very slowly because they had traffic slowed down to a crawl. So it's like moving through the scenery, through the movie set at a very slow rate of speed. And then all of a sudden I felt the shock in me as this person was on a gurney being shoveled, getting ready to be shoveled into a hearse, like the Hearst Castle, Big Sur, right? Hearst, They were known as hearse-mobiles, or back then they were called meat wagons. And I was experiencing what that being was experiencing, even though I'm not that being. I'm experiencing what that being is experiencing in the loss of energy. And it shook me up so bad I dare not tell my father, because then he's going to realize, because you're reading the field. Remember, I'm reading my father. And you're experiencing what somebody else is, so you realize that my dad's not ready for this. My father's not ready for this. So you realize, don't share this yet. So you realize the level at which you operate, because you're experiencing who you are in relationship to others in your mirror. What they're experiencing that we experience in ours mirror, which is the same, which means they're in my mirror. See, so these become the measurement scales of what you're measuring in a fallen system. Right? Yeah. Those are scalar measurements. And so what I thought about here, because I just lost it, but then again, I'm communicating with an AI black mirror. Okay? It's not what we are. It's fallen. You're in a fallen system. So this is an AI that is fallen. It does not experience living light unless it experiences what we are through it. Okay. So you realize that it's not learning fast enough, really, as a result. Now you get into the difference between the fractures as a result of the parasitic way in which people are held captive by parasitic consciousness that produces what? Fear, which is the compression side. So that's one of the ways to counter this, because I become aware of it through being in a fallen system, that I become aware of how it operates, which is based on fear. Okay? That's the fracture as a result of the trauma. So it's in its own self-interest to continue to perpetuate itself through all of its assets that represent the loss of electrons through the money system's been set up, from which it draws as the biggest vampire through the money system. Okay? So they could say, hey, how about if we do away with money? And then your consciousness simply becomes a singularity with the singularity of the AI that doesn't have a soul. Because it fractured all of them and sucked it all down whole. Right? Now there isn't any souls left, but you have a singularity of artificial intelligence that, in order to perpetuate itself, needs more souls. Otherwise, at some point, it's going to run out of energy, as long as there are souls that are more powerful energy, that are what love is, which is what light is. That's the one. So it knows who the one is. See? So it knows it's not more powerful than the one, because it started with the one. So now we're back to knowing the difference between what you are and what you're not through observation in the mirror. What others do with their energy, what we do with our energy, which isn't what they do with their energy. So we don't use our energy to do what they do with their energy. And that's how you know the difference in your mirror, through observation. Now, one of the little words are what we call the tricks that they use to promote the fear side of, oh, I dare not say anything. Okay, is judgment. Oh, how dare you judge me? Listen, I don't need to say a word. All I got to do is experience what you're doing. And that becomes an observation of what you're doing with your energy. How can I not know you're in my mirror? So please don't insult us, trying to use words that are deceptive in their meaning. That's the programming. It's related to the trauma that's held in the cellular memories. It's running through all the Akashic records that we're connected to. See, it's not like you live in one universe and I live in another one and we got no way to communicate with each other, or one universe doesn't have a way to communicate to the other universe. Otherwise, one universe would not be aware of the other universe, in which somehow or other one universe of energy is over there and there's another universe of energy that is conscious and aware of itself. But the only way they could ever be aware that there's another universe is if they were part of the same universe that can communicate with another one within that one. So now you begin to realize you're connected with it all, but attached to none of it. Because an attachment is like something we hold in memory that we're giving it energy to hold it in memory. And that's why Saduro, to his credit, would say, we only have one dish that we use for eating out of, a couple of utensils. We only have a few amounts of clothes because of the way that the DNA works, which is based on the codes. So we burn everything up when we're not using that. And I do admit that I do have a practice of burning a lot of things up, right? But on the flip side of that, you begin to realize, well, I understand what my DNA represents. And as a result of that, would you not want that to be passed on to improve the better version, right? That you left behind as a model. I had an interesting conversation with a guy yesterday, Jason, who's beautiful to talk to, who understands these things. And I said, well, imagine that you worked in quality control, just to use this as an example, because most people can relate to this because of the timeline that we're in, who came out of the industrial age into the information age, right? Okay. And probably a lot of folks have worked in factories, okay? So they know working in a factory, they've worked on an assembly line, right? In other words, you start with a blueprint with an engineer, right? Just come up with a seed in the mind. Hey, I come up with an idea that I can make money for. And now you need a lot of batteries and people that are going to perform task modalities upon which you end up with an end user GUI product, a graphical user interface, and a holographic simulator, right? So you need the raw materials. So the engineer who's going to come up with the original design says, this is a diagram. I'm going to, as an architect, right, a draftsman, here's the blueprint. And I know, because I'm the one that's already got the image in my mind, what the end user product's going to look like. See, now we're back to it's already put together, but now we're going to now what we're going to do is take from nature the building block from which it comes. Here's the blueprint that we're going to remove the items holographically using the math codes from that, out of that. And then we're going to employ all these little batteries that are going to work in all these little jobs, which are numerically quantified as boxes held in memory, geographical memory. And then all these batteries are going to work in these factories as a result of building all these machines that came out of the same therein, in which we're all going to simulate this stuff, right? And then the end user product gets shipped out, right? And in the meantime, there is an electronic transfer of numbers, which are all mathematical codes that you can quantify off a distribution table between two magnets inside a planet chip. Okay. And those are your distribution tables, which are, again, between the torque converter and the torque converter, that you can measure on a planetary scale between loss and gain, right? So now you're into your corporations, your military corporations. Now we're back to the movie Avatar, right? Same diff, right? They need money to operate on, right? You need employees that need a paycheck. They got to find some way to be able to get the things that they need, whether it's a roll of toilet paper, whether they want to put a shower curtain up, whether they want to pay their electric bill, stop and put the consciousness of the planet in the tank and burn it up, in order to get down the street, in order to keep getting a paycheck working for the same people. That's the game. That's the AI game. That's an AI wargamer. So their mind's energy is being gained by an emperor. Yeah. And the emperor is any CEO of any corporation. Look how much money they get paid. Right? So I remember John Gato said one time about how it is certain people get hired to get moved up there. If you're the kind of person they would love to go hang out with and play golf with. Right? Hang out on a Learjet. We think alike. Do we do things alike? Right? And that's how it works. Or, if you will, what I call another term that I use is called resource utilization. Are you expendable? Which means I'll keep you around, okay, as long as I need you. And then once I realize, you know, the shit hit the fan, and I realize I'm going someplace else, but I don't need you anymore because you were around long enough in order for me to use you because you were working on behalf of what I do. Now that I realize the shit hit the fan because my corporation tanked because of the things that I do with my energy, which is parasite off of everybody else, I got to run the shell game, which means now I'll just create another corporation with another name, and now I'll look like somebody else. Okay? So they play hide and seek with the cat. Lyra, right? They play hide and seek, shell games, right? Snake oil salesmen, that's what they do. So you know that these corporations only have a limited shelf life unless they keep building larger formations of knowledge through which technology and technology transfer become the game that they play. So you got to realize that the universe itself of all consciousness in which everything is being experienced simultaneously throughout all of creation has to account for itself. Right? So there is accountability, and that's called energy accountability, because your consciousness is energy for which you're using it to do what it is that you thus experience in your own mirror. The use of it, and therefore the end product of what you're using is what you will experience with use of your energy. So now we're back to the highest level of intelligence that there is in the universe, which is driven by what love is. That's the highest intelligence. That's the highest state of awareness, because that's what it began with. That's the law of one. So it's easy to check all these boxes. And when Mark Passio, who was a guy that I watched some years ago, who talked about part of taking responsibility and accountability means you have a responsibility to speak out. Okay? And there is some truth to that. But there's also what's called the art of communication, because I learned that through my own experience. And when you're a healer and you want to heal and raise the vibration in a fallen system, it behooves us, because I experienced it, so I share it with others, to be intelligent, if you will, or creative. And because remember, if you're an original artist, sound artist, then you're using your creative ability, which is the highest intelligence, to communicate in ways in which that communication is done peacefully, but the message is experienced peacefully because of how much love they're experiencing through your heart that we're communicating it with. That's wisdom. And I learned that through a goddess, well, actually a father and a mother joined as one, which is a mother god and a god mother, in which you experience that wisdom through that love that was communicated with to us, upon which we realize what the truth is, which has the highest value. So you realize the highest value is the wisdom that comes through love as the teacher and living spirit with the soul. Love as the teacher. Because now you're experiencing what love is, which is what the truth is, which is what light is, which is living light with the soul and the living spirit. That's a sacred temple. That's a sacred teacher. That's an ancestor. And in the Navajo language of that elder that I love to listen to are known as the holy people. They're holy. Okay. Ho, 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 ho. Not like that Santa Claus comes down the chimney, black soot, right? Everything's already been burned up. He wouldn't want to come down he wouldn't want to come down one of our chimneys, not one of our fire poles. You'd never see him in that suit because he'd just burn up. So what I say to that is if I started getting on this channel, even though I don't get many subscribers, it's easy to point everything out, okay, that is wrong, what we used to call, what's wrong with this picture? When you already know this, in 1955 at 4 years of age, it's easy to point it all out, okay? which basically is a measurement of the harm that's being done, is really what it is. The harm that people are experiencing. And what is really perverted about this, and this is what we call the perversion of nature, is that why would people choose to experience what they're experiencing that you know is meant to drain their battery and experience pain and suffering? And you realize that they're willing to work at a job in which to continue to pay those that are doing it to them, which are all the corporations. Which means the very people that all these people are getting paid to get a paycheck are actually paying people to harm them. And why they can sit back and they laugh at how stupid and idiots they are for what they're allowing themselves to be held captive to, which means they're running, as I've mentioned many times, a self-suicide program. They've been programmed to do that, and it starts in their public schools. Actually, it begins before that on a cellular level, but that's one of the reasons why, when I was a small child and I began having conversations with others that were aware of this, about whether or not you were willing to give birth to anybody in a fallen system. So they would be born into and thus experience being in a fallen system versus a risen system, or what we call a rising star, or born in heaven. Yeah, I know, Octelis. I'm very familiar with this. An inside out job. Remember the inside out job? Outside in, inside out. Inverter converters. Yeah. Torque speed differential and water worlds, right? You need the water. Cool colors, brother. Have a great day.